So we know that we can ask Gemini, using its Canva mode, to generate PowerPoint presentations. So now there was a question, especially from the agents, about how they can do this. So I'm introducing the gems, a new gem. How do I create a PowerPoint that will be predictable or consistent so that depending on what I give it, I want it to always be of the same quality? So I have a little framework, a method that I like to use, which is about style. Next, I focus on the structure. I'll explain to you everything that the elements will contain. And finally, the content. So why? Because I really want them to understand from the start that PowerPoint has a certain style, a certain structure, and certain content. So really here, we can go very, very deep into each of these elements. I can go from very, very detailed to very, very simple. I can tell it, for example, I want my PowerPoint to have a corporate style, comma, and be blue with variations of blue. Or we can go much further, like taking a screenshot of a website. So I made my choice. For example, Wavestone, a consulting agency. Well, not just an agency, but a large firm, if I may say so. I take a screenshot of the style, and then, for example, I can ask Gemini using a screenshot. So I did it. I took a quick screenshot of the website. Can you extract for me the graphic style, the typography, the colors, the energy, and the wording of this website, and summarize that for me in a short paragraph, let us say, about 800 characters. So you can really take this very, very far. And it works really well. I took a screenshot, as you can see, of the website. I give it all of that. And here you can see the site adopts a text style. There you go. Look, I'm going to take this tech, kind of like Strapdo, the energy. It's going to be like this. I'm going to get the wording. Now, we're pretty much there, so you can really go very, very simple. What I encourage you to do is we often start with something very simple and move on to something much more complicated, like what we're about to see here. Here you can see again, typography stands out, sans serif font for the title, very geometrically spaced, blah, blah, blah. So generally, I don't copy something in paragraph style. Very rarely do I copy something longer than 1,000 characters. This here is about 800. That way, it's still somewhat readable. Because if it's too long, sure, it'll be related to the brand. Because here I ask for 800 characters, but I could ask, for example, let's say I ask for 5,000. That way, I tell myself, oh, I really have the full range of possibilities in terms of style. But the problem is, if I want to add elements or later modify the visual style, I'll have too much information. And actually, my input, so what I add myself to the style, will get lost in the mass and the flood of the style. So once you've managed to identify the style that will often correspond to the colors, the energy, and energy is also the verbal tone. It's the type of words you'll use, whether you're very professional, corporate, or very creative. The colors, so the colors that will be important, but also the typography. Typography is about how the website is written, how the letters come across, what kind of font you're going to use. No need to make it complicated. The goal is already to have something much more structured, something fairly effective. Finally, we have the structure. So the structure is directly related to the operating method. So you always have to put it first. That, of course, that seems obvious. But the structure is going to be extremely important depending on the operating method. So what do we want to create? What is the goal we have with this agent? For example, I love sector studies, but just as an example, I could ask Gemini, can you give me a comprehensive structure, a sort of empty yet essential framework encompassing the 12 most critically important sections of a detailed sector study? I fully expect you to just give me precisely that, nothing more, nothing less. The main categories, so something that will be a maximum of 400 characters. And in fact, it will give me an empty framework. So look, I'll have all of that. A space for the field, a space for yours. Perfect. I can actually force the artificial intelligence to adopt a structure. So here, for example, in the structure section, I'm going to tell it, if it cooperates, that is. In any case, the PowerPoint will have to follow the following structure. Here I use a colon, what I also call a logical sequence. Logical sequence means I'm referring to this, I'm talking about this. Here I've given it all the elements. That way I'm sure it will have them. And finally, the content. The content will be, for example, if you have analyses, information, input data that you know you're going to provide. For example, in this case, the content should include all the data and statistics, comma, on the market, comma, as well as the innovations that have taken place, but also the next recommendations and actions we could take, comma, knowing that each analysis should focus on the artificial intelligence market. You know what? I'm not going to specify the market right away. I'm to center on the market, the content where you define what you need content. It can be format, content. It needs to be long, very detailed, very concise, without jargon or with a lot of jargon, with lots of bold text, animations. You can even add icons. This is where you'll be able to influence the generation of the PowerPoint. To keep it really simple, I'm going to give it a sort of step-by-step guide. So here it has the whole style of PowerPoint presentations. I can even tell you, don't worry, once again, if you have any questions or need more details, check the document that will be provided along with this entire video. You'll find a lot more information there, as well as copy-paste content to make things easier for you. Here, I'll be able to tell it. For everything related to PowerPoint, you'll need to apply the following style and elements. That way, it knows that everything that follows is related to the PowerPoint. Now I'll come back here and tell it. I'll give you the name of a sector and maybe a specialty, and I expect you to generate accordingly. A PowerPoint of about 20 to 40 slides. Slide, no, the V15, 2 slides. And here, the idea is that in the end, I've done a large part of the agent. I'll just need to make sure to activate the default tool, which will be Canva like this. I'm sure that by default, it will generate for me. For my PowerPoint, I won't need to explain it to it, demo PowerPoint, let's say, there you go. Once that's done, once all this work is finished, I'll be able to save it, which means it will be created. I'll be able to talk to it. I start the conversation. Here, for example, I'm going to tell it the integration of artificial intelligence in consulting professions, or in consulting, or in education. There you go. We'll take all three. And you can see that I don't need to specify that Canva is directly integrated, and I can launch it directly without worrying about anything. It will generate a PowerPoint for me. So here, the goal is to see if, in the end, artificial intelligence, with the work we've done, will be able to respect the style that I gave it as input. Remember, I extracted it from a website or from a screenshot. You can do that too. As well as the structure I gave it, which I'll show you in a staggered way like this, we'll really be able to compare and see to what extent, in the end, it respects what I asked for. So for example, I can clearly see some SWOT here. I can see a bit because we can watch what it's generating at the same time. You can see I scroll down and I see everything that's being generated. What do I see? A dish, the sections. There are quite a few elements being created, and we'll be able to see what has been produced. So you can see here, I have my slides. I can move from right to left. Here, I have the instructions. So the style, the content, and the structure are all there. Remember, I often look at the structure for a demonstration. Scope, definition, revenue, key size, trends and growth, supply analysis. I'm looking at what has been produced. Definition once again. Now what am I going to see next? Scope and application. Global AI market. I have exactly what I asked for. And in the end, this is really how you can generate something that will be usable. Operational level. It's as soon as you manage to, in a way, force artificial intelligence to follow along a bit, to keep pace, to really make sure it knows the structure and the element that needs to be produced and that it knows how to replicate it. By the way, don't forget, all of this is an iterative tool. If you don't like it, for example, I find that it didn't really respect my colors. So nothing stops me from going back in and telling it, be careful, it really needs to be blue, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. So in any case, that's how it is. The idea is that you can provide a structure, you can really force the AI to apply your style, and it will manage to do it. I use that a lot myself. For example, the last time we did this was a week ago in the hospitality industry. Instead of doing a report every month, we created an agent that already knew in its operating mode the data we were going to input about the bed and breakfast, so everything related to meals and so on. And it had all the input data, and it performed the analysis and then produced the report. And the report, which was then given directly to the operations manager, who was actually on site. And instead of having something monthly, in fact, we had something twice a week. That might seem trivial, but it's actually a very, very effective method once you really manage to produce exactly what you want, once you've managed to explain the right structure and have a good style. After that, anyone who understands the operational mode will be able to provide exactly what they want in terms of input data. And generally, you'll get a result that's going to be useful. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll see you very soon for the next video.